Boom. Okay. Hey Grant,
Hey Dave.
how are you?
I'm good. This is it's exciting. This is a lot of talk and promised. This is a long time coming, to say the least.
It is, but at the same time, I mean, we're here to talk about Attack on Titan, and Attack on Titan season 4 is starting imminently, either today or tomorrow. But one thing I did realize is like they really take their time between seasons. Like season 1 came out in 2012.
That can't be right.
2012.
2012.
They had a 4-year break between season 1 and season 2.
That's so funny.
And then I think 2 years between season 2 and 3, and then like season 3 they did in two parts with
A
almost
year,
a
a
year
year
apart.
apart.
Yeah, so
Because it was April to April, I believe.
yeah, so that's yeah. I saw on a Reddit today. People were like, "I can't believe we're about to finish this journey we've been on for 8 years."
Wait, so is season four also going to be split in two, or is this a straight run? I
I
actually
have
have no idea.
I have no idea. I haven't
Hmm.
read or heard anything about it. I think that may remain an unknown, but or or we'll figure that out this week as we watch the premiere episode of season 4. Maybe they'll like drop a schedule list or an episode list or something, but I don't know if they're gonna split it. I do know it's the final season, and I do know that manga readers say that it just gets better and better. People seem to be confident that the conclusion will be great, whatever that means. So this should be a good series of television.
I still can't wrap my head around 2012. That is,
I know,
well, fitting,
eh? Yeah.
proposed apocalyptic year versus an actual apocalyptic year. Very beginning and end. Now I'm trying to think if that was in 2012. There's no way I watched that when it first came out. Now I'm trying to think when I first found the show.
Yeah, I found it, I think, in 2000, maybe 17 or 16. I think season 2 was out, and I I think I flip flopped on it for at least a year before season 3 came out. So yeah, I mean, I entered the game relatively late, depending on how
Mm.
you look at it. But we still had to wait for season 3, and we had to wait for season 3 part 2. So yeah,
I believe season three is the only one, or I guess the two of them split are the only ones I watched week to week. I
yeah,
I believe
same.
I caught up on season two prior, maybe a week prior to season three coming out.
Yeah,
But well, what's your favorite season so far, Dave? I guess in the four parts released so far.
definitely. I mean, they're also great, but season 3 part 2 just feels like its own season, and it
Yeah.
feels like it's just payoff, payoff, payoff. Like you get a lot of shows, anime and regular shows, that are just all about setup, and then the payoff never really feels right.
Mm.
But season 3 just felt like they were just dunking on the audience constantly, like with fight scenes, with character development, with answering big questions about the show.
Hmm.
The whole way through, it felt like season 3 was just reveal after reveal, and at the end of it, well, I'm sure we'll get into this in a bit, but at the end of season 3, it just primes you for even more crazy stuff to come. So it's like, Jesus.
I was gonna say because the payoff, because all like it's 8 years. I guess seven-ish by the time when
Yeah.
the second part of season three came out. But can you think of a show where people have been waiting and waiting and waiting, and it was there's actually something of substance in the reveal?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is to answer your question, no, I can't think of
Mm-hmm.
a show that has nailed the reveal so big. Like they propose the what's in the basement. I think they proposed that in the pilot of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Like Aaron's dad's like, "Oh, here's this key, you get to the basement, blah blah blah." And you
And
just
they
sort
hit it
of
again in season two as well, if I recall.
oh,
They
they
at
hit it
various points
throughout.
they keep reminding us.
Yeah, they hit it throughout. And you just wonder, like, what the hell could be in this basement that is going to be worth all this hype? And like, it is when you do get to the basement, it is such a curveball.
Mm.
It's like, okay, yeah, why that was not what I was expecting. I think everybody was expecting some kind of reveal, but not what they gave us. But maybe we should talk about that yet. Do we want to
No,
maybe recap season 3 part 1, and then we can move into part 2?
I think that's a perfect idea. Season three, part one. I gotta say, my man Flegel if you recall. What a hero. The unsung hero of season 3, in my opinion.
What does he do in season 3, part 1? Why are you calling him a hero?
Flegel is the son of, I believe his father was Reeve. He was a head
Yes.
merchant,
Yes.
and his father. I think that was the reveal that the military police were working, behind the scenes, shrouding everyone's eyes to the
Yes.
secrets.
Yep.
And poor Flegel watched because Kenny killed his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Flegel was hiding in the dark and overcame his fears. I had completely forgotten about that whole how that played out because that's up to 2 parts. I feel like part 2, we'll get to that, but it overshadowed all
Definitely.
of part 1. Like there was so much content in the first part of season 3 that
Yeah,
it, it,
I agree. But season 3, part 1 almost makes me think of like the Star Wars prequels because it's like, hear me out. Because it's very out of nowhere. Like, this show is all about like this post-apocalyptic world with like
Mm,
giant titans, and then season 3, part 1 comes along, and it's like all about political intrigue and
mm,
conspiracies and espionage, and it's like who is the royal family? What is their place here? And then like we go on this random Levi story about like who the hell is Kenny and all that stuff. That was super interesting.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole I think the whole Historia arc was mostly in season 3, part 1. Is that right? Where
Yeah.
she gets crowned, and her dad is the one that they abduct Aaron, right?
Yes, they abduct Aaron and her in the beginning part because there's the whole the decoy,
Yeah.
knowing that they're being watched. Yeah, so yeah, no, they get Historia and Aaron. They have Aaron chained up down in the Crystal Cave, and I guess that's just where like the whole Ymir stuff really comes into focus, I suppose,
Yeah.
like the 1700 years ago and all that.
Yeah. The that fight scene, I remember I was like, I think the audience, like a lot of people were getting tired of Aaron getting kidnapped for like
Sure.
the third time. It's like, really, man? Like you can't put up even a little bit of a fight this time.
No. No.
He just takes a trank dart to the neck. He's immediately down for the count. It's like, really?
Yeah.
But that scene where the Levi squad kicks in that door and
Mm.
goes in with barrels of smoke and oil,
Mm.
and they take it to Kenny's team. I was like, and it just shows you, you got Sasha there, you got John or Jean or Connie, you
Mm-hmm.
got that whole crew, and they've all come so far. It's so cool to see them just literally kicking in the door and raiding like a military police setup.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there, like John had that whole arc where earlier in season 3, as Aaron is getting kidnapped, he kind of hesitates,
Mm-hmm.
and because he doesn't want to take someone's life, so Armin has to step up and do it.
My
And
guy, Army,
yeah,
my guy.
and then he doesn't hesitate when they finally conduct the raid. They're
Yeah.
just Sasha's slinging arrows into people.
They're in it now.
They're in it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they have changed. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember when Armin killed that guy. I think he shot him.
Mm-hmm.
They do this a lot where they'll cut in the middle of an action scene to like this weird let's chat about it, this weird like, okay, now it's a day later and we're all talking about it, and then they're going to
Mm.
cut back to the action scene after the conversation. But there's this little cut where Armin's like getting sick, and Levi's like, you did the right thing. John wouldn't be here if you didn't kill that person.
Mm-hmm.
And and they're all circled, they're on this circle talking about it, and you're like, Jesus, like none of these people signed up to start killing human beings. And that was
Not at
a
all.
big turning point, it felt like, in the show.
That's the thing I've always loved about the show because not just in season 3 but all of it. The whole time, they've all thought one thing so strongly,
Yep.
and then they get into the thick of it, and it's just not that case anymore. The truths are revealed, and they're so far into it, like they can't back out.
Yeah.
And they really roll with like where the story goes, like just true development of characters into the story. Like, oh man,
Yeah, and
Army.
Arnie, before we get to him, I feel like we have to talk about just in that whole raid and that whole Aaron getting abducted very earlier in the season. they give a lot of show to how nitty gritty Levi is. Like, I think the
Hmm.
audience always knew that he was a badass,
Hmm. Very
but
mysterious.
yeah, but
Yeah.
then when he not only doesn't hesitate to start taking heads,
Mm.
but he's ordering his squad like, yo, suit up. Like, it's about to get for real.
Yeah.
And throughout that this journey that his character goes on, or the arc that his character has, where you start realizing what is his relationship with Kenny. Kenny is this total scoundrel who also seems to kill with impunity, and Levi clearly has a past with him.
Hmm.
I like that they go back and show you, their relationship, how Levi kind of came to be,
Hmm.
what he is, and how he met Kenny and the circumstances that they met in, and et cetera, et cetera. I thought that like that was like you know, that was not overdue, but Levi's character needed that like expose on his past, because if he's just like this perfect warrior that never loses and is always coming off cool, and you don't know where he comes from, then it's kind of less meaningful. Does that make sense?
Do you think they should have done that sooner, or do you think? Because I did find, when that moment came, it kind of just felt like, here it is. Now it's going to make sense for the scene to follow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It just
I
it did seem a little abrupt, and it's awesome. I could have, I would love to see more of the, the city underground and all that, and
yeah,
but it
because
just, I did, if of a nitpick of a, incredible season. I did find it was like, here it is. It was just like an info dump and exposition
it
on like a scene they had to show immediately afterwards.
I agree. It was a
Yeah.
little late, and it feels like, I don't know if you how well you remember season two, but the big thing that comes out of season two is like the Beast Titan, and then obviously the reveal that Reiner and Berthold are traitors, and they're the armored
Hmm.
and colossal titans. But the rest of season two, there's a good amount of action, but so much of it is like character
Hmm.
background and exposition. Like, you learn about Reiner and Berthold, you learn about all these tertiary characters and where they come from.
Yep.
That kind of would have been the perfect time to explain what the hell's going on with Levi.
Hmm.
And it was like,
And
why did we wait on this? Because he's a really big part of season three. So maybe it was like a pacing thing, or maybe
could
it
be,
wasn't relevant
could be.
yet, or maybe they wanted to keep his past mysterious until he had to face it in the form of Kenny.
Mm. I feel like it would have had more impact because I find Kenny was like, like a flash in a hot pan,
Definitely, I totally agree. He was
and
super had my attention early, but then his character sort of simmers a little bit, and you realize like, wait, like this guy had an interesting story, but it feels like he was mostly there to provide Levi with like some more character development. Does that make sense?
yeah, it feels like this, all that setup of their past together was just to lead up to the moment under the tree,
Yeah.
handing off the vial. You know.
Yeah, and the vial obviously ends up being like this super important plot device,
Hmm.
and Levi, has that moment with Kenny where he connects the dots himself,
Hmm.
which was kind of cool. I think it did teach us about another thing, right? That Kenny was obviously an Ackerman, Levi's an
Hmm.
Ackerman, and Mikasa is an Ackerman. It seems like we learned a bit about that lineage
Has that
via
been
Kenny.
touched on yet? I don't believe it has between Mikasa and
They
Levi.
they have like this super offhand exchange, I think, somewhere in season three,
Mm.
where they're both in a cart, and he says, "It seems like your last name is also Ackerman. Have you ever felt like like a surge of energy in your body where you felt like you were unstoppable?" And it like it flashes back to when Mikasa and Eren killed those two men when they were children. Do you remember that?
Oh yes. Wow.
So they touch on the fact that, hey, we both have the same last name. Have you ever felt, super like a superhero, I guess?
Mm.
And they say yes, but then they don't really touch on it.
Mm.
And then Kenny, in all of the flashbacks and expositions, Kenny kind of mentions he goes over it at one point. He basically says, people didn't like the Ackermans because it sounds like for some reason they were immune to this mind control thing that the
Well,
founding
there
Titan was capable of. Is that
because there's
accurate?
the seven. If I remember correctly, there's the seven bloodlines unaffected,
Right. Yes. So they're
and
one of those, I take it.
that's what I'm guessing. Yeah, I feel like readers of the manga would know that one in depth. That is the one thing I do. I've I know I'm pretty sure this goes the same for you, but I've never been one to read the manga of any series. I like, I've always just enjoyed, the anime aspect. But this is the first time I've watched a show where I really wish I knew the nitty gritty and all the. It's similar to Game of Thrones. I watched the show and it's like, I wish I knew more about that. I should probably read that.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I haven't read any of it either, but
Mm.
apparently manga readers so far are pretty satisfied with
Mm.
they're so far pretty satisfied with how the show is representing the manga. It is apparently pretty damn faithful to the source,
Mm.
and I mean it's faithful in the way that like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, like
Mm-hmm.
faithful in the same way where it's like they're recreating shot for shot a lot of scenes.
Wow.
Like that, towards the end of season 3, part 2, when Aaron goes down and he, because I think he takes like a boulder to the gut from the Beast Titan.
Okay.
We're zipping ahead there, but I remember that there are panels from the manga that show that exact frame,
Hmm.
and there are panels from the manga that show exact frames of Levi beating up the Beast Titan just afterwards. So I'm curious how much more how much more they elaborate on this whole lineage stuff in the manga, if we're missing a lot in the show.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to imagine that we're going to touch a lot on that in season 4, right? Because it feels like the focus is shifting big time with the reveal at the end of season 3, which we should probably talk about.
Going back now, I'm thinking about because I just kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but the reveal of like the Kingdom of Marley in season 3, part 2, that I feel is that's how they should have introduced the connection between Levi and Kenny.
Interesting.
Set it up the season before. There's a moment. It's revealed. I guess it's a little different because in season 3, part 2, that was like that was the basement.
Yeah.
It was all shown to us. I guess they had to show us that before we walked into what we were getting. And can you imagine season 4, episode 1? And it's just it's like, oh, there's another kingdom. It wouldn't be as viable.
Yeah, I agree. They kind of needed to go out on that high note
Yeah.
and give the audience something to chew on while we waited for season 4.
So I guess before we're kind of all over the place here, but favorite moment of season 3, part 1. What would you say?
Favorite moment of season? Oh, I definitely. It's all in the same episode. It's this mixture of Aaron has been kidnapped. They're in that crystal cave, and Historia kind of grows a pair and tells her dad, beat it.
Yeah.
She literally, I think, it's like judo throws the guy.
Yeah. I'm good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Aaron, kind of sacks up because they both kind of have like a big coming to moment. It feels like where
Mhm.
Aaron is doing a lot of whining and a lot of crying, and Historia is kind of being bullied around by her family. She says enough of this shit, and Aaron is being rescued by the Levi squad, but it looks like the cave's going to cave in on them.
Mhm.
And he grabs that armor vial and he gets the armor ability, and he saves them all. And it felt like all that happened in the space of like, a few minutes, where Historia says enough of this shit. Aaron kind of wakes up, gives his head a shake, and then saves the crew. And then they frame it really well. They're like, "Hey, you created all this. Now we have the ability to do this. Do you realize how big of a game changer this is?" Because
Mhm.
if you remember, like he later goes on to use the armor ability to like, he patches a hole in the wall and does
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff with that. But it just felt like it was a big emotional. Sorry, it was like a big emotional hurdle for both of those two characters in the space of a very short time. That was a big one for me. What about you?
Hmm. I think the introduction of Kenny was pretty big.
Oh God, yeah.
That throwdown the city. They know it's an Attack on Titan. It does it so well. It's really good at not revealing the characters' cards too early.
Yeah.
Like the characters know what they're doing, and they know like the setting of like the decoy. Like they knew they were gonna have eyes on them. It just shows like it's how well trained and how smart these people are.
Mm-hmm.
They're thriving in their situation. Shows that like it just goes to show that their skills outside of like killing titans as scouts, like they're you know they were drawn to that position for a specific reason. Like I don't know, just the whole setup of the decoy, and then the reveal, and then the new the dynamic equipment there. You know,
Oh
just
yeah, the Kenny's
unreal. Like
men.
watching,
Yeah.
yeah, like watching Kenny's men and the scouts go head to head like that was just jaw dropping.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, that's like I think Kenny blows away one of Levi's lieutenants or something right at the end of the pilot of season 3, and then I think like
Yes.
the second episode is like that fight you're talking about.
Yeah.
That ODM, those ODM scenes are always so amazing, but that one was especially great.
Yeah.
Levi evading all of the men, fighting his way through them.
And then the showdown at the bar.
Oh, the bar
Yeah.
scene is so great.
Drawing him out, getting him talking, setting up exposition, and then just blows him away and makes us run for it.
Yeah.
It's
And you're right. It does give the characters a lot of credit because you learn later, like one, they had a decoy, like you said. They're not amateurs anymore. You know what I mean? They're
no.
part of. If you remember, like Aaron used to say, like the Levi squad is like the group of the most elite scouts, and now they're all there, and they use the decoy. And then early on, Levi tells Mikasa, he says, "Hey, we're going to be fighting people now, just so you're aware." And he kind of calls that before shit really hits the fan. Yeah, those are two. That's a really great moment too in season 3, part 1.
And also too, I guess another big part, double dipping here a little bit, but the reveal to the people of like just how corrupt the hierarchy is of the wall.
Yes.
Because it's one thing when it's just the characters, like the main cast knows, that there's wrongdoing going on here, and there's the just greed and and the lack of care or well-being for the people in the kingdom, and just having everyone else involved in it. And then there's also the moments of like I think I'm thinking ahead, that's actually part 2, but just like revealing to everyone that like we're not alone.
Yeah.
It's
I totally agree.
it's just really good at making the world believable.
Yeah, they do a good job, and they do that later in part 2, and we'll get to that in a sec. But you're right. They do a good job of doubling back
Mm-hmm.
and being like, hey, it's not just the main characters, this small group of this giant society that know what's up. Like that whole reveal of showing the citizens the whole corruption. Like, well, that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of the point, right? The show does a good job of being like, we're an entire society that's in the darkness. You know what I mean? It's not just a few of these main characters that want to know. It's like the entire society within those walls is just the blind leading the blind, and you know what I mean. So as we get these knowledge bombs,
Mm-hmm.
it's cool to see that they bring everybody along with them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's good for part 1.
I think so, yeah.
Part 2 is, we kind of talked about it earlier. It's just payoff action, absolute madness. It feels like for I don't know how many episodes it was, but it's just nonstop. I mean, it feels like part 2 picks right up. And if I remember correctly, they start with the mission of going to plug that hole in Walmaria.
I believe it's the training. Is there not? There is the sequence of Aaron trying to master the hardening
Oh
ability,
yeah, yeah, you're right. There is. He's having
and
trouble with it. They're working him pretty hard.
yeah.
Yeah, they're planning their attack. Oh, and
Or you know what?
go ahead.
Maybe I'm even thinking that wrong. Is it? Do they not have? They've designed a weapon.
Yeah, they are. No, you're right. It
It's
happens
Hanji.
alongside that.
Is it Hanji? Yeah.
Yeah, Hanji develops the
Might have
what are
that
they called? The
backwards.
missile things, the thunder spears.
Oh wow, that would be a highlight. Oh no, that is part 2 of.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is part 2.
yeah.
Thunder
But the
Spears.
thunder spears are getting developed, and they're working on Aaron with the hardening ability. So we know what their goal is, right? Right from the
Yeah.
right off the jump, season 2 or season 3, part 2 is like, hey, we're gonna go
Plug the
plug that
hole.
hole,
Get the basement.
and yeah, in the basement is definitely a priority, and also, Erwin is alive. Obviously, he's driving a lot of that direction. He's saying, hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna go plug that hole. We're gonna get some answers. And on top of that, towards the end of season 3, part 1, there's this flash or this cut to the armored Titan just having gotten his ass beat by the Beast Titan. and you realize, oh, like, are these people all together now? And
Mm,
we started doing some early cuts in season 3, part 2, where you realize, okay, Bertold and Reiner and this Beast Titan guy whose name we don't know at that point, they're all there together, and they seem to be anticipating an attack.
mm.
So they do a good job of like building that tension very early. Like they're showing a lot of Aaron's drills, and they're showing the Thunder Spears. So you know that there's like this inevitable big fight
Yeah,
on the way,
a clash is coming.
and it did not disappoint.
No, no, not at all.
So is that pretty much what happens next? Is we walk into the Walmart that Maria district, I think. They plug the first hole with little to no opposition
Nope,
whatsoever,
it just goes and gets done. And
and Aaron is kind of speaking the mind of the audience. He's like, "This is eerie. There's
yeah,
nothing going on yet."
yeah, something grim is on the way.
Yeah, and this is one of the many wins early on that in this season or in this sequence that Armin gets. Right?
Yes.
I think it's Erwin says, spread out, look around, and then Armin's the one who has the idea. He's like, hey, wait, look inside the walls.
Mm.
And of course, no one but him thought of that. And of course, that leads them to finding Reiner, right?
Yeah, well, hidden in the walls. But is it interesting? Did you find? I did find in part two they really were. The narrative was that Armin was toast. Did you find that like right from the get go? Just
Yeah, they
I
were.
just felt like there was so many signs of like I for sure thought he was gone, and then eventually in the end he was. But you know, it's I thought that was another little nitpick of part two was like there was some hand holding
Oh, like they
of
were laying
like
it on a little thick.
because the pride I find one of the prides of the show is like no one was safe. There's
Big
some
time.
significant plot armor I found for some characters.
Yeah.
Like obviously Aaron being the biggest one,
Yeah.
and Mikasa was pretty bulletproof as well. But
Mm-hmm.
Armin was always that one where like is he or is he not?
Because he's a valuable asset, but he's so delicate.
Yes, he's perfect for like getting someone to that next emotional step towards their victory. Like he could be a sacrifice.
Oh
But I
God,
don't.
yeah.
I found it was the first time in the show where like they just revealed the hand
You
a
felt like
little
they
too
showed it a
early.
little too early. Yeah. Yeah.
You
No, that's
know,
fair.
it was just like it was one moment after another, and he's my guy. Like I wanted, I want him to go the mile, and I think he is. But yeah, I don't know. It's
Well, he's picking up a lot of wins in season 3, right? I mean, he helps develop a lot of strategies with that raid they do in season 1 and how
mhm,
to combat the type of gear that Kenny's people were using, and then
yeah.
with this finding the hole in the wall in part 2, and then obviously it climaxes when he kind of single-handedly figures out a way to bring down the colossal titan,
Yeah.
and it involves sacrificing of himself, right? So he was just getting a lot of wins in the win column, and it feels like if we skip ahead for a sec, if you remember when Levi has to make the choice of who to revive after Armin has sacrificed himself, and they have to choose between him and Erwin. They kind of go through his resume.
Yeah.
There's an actual
Yeah.
scene where they're like, we got to bring back Erwin. He's the leader of the scouts. He's the man. He's got the leadership skills. And then I think it's Aaron who's like, hey, well, hold up a minute here. Like, the only
Yeah.
reason we're here in the first place is because Armin has figured out all these things.
The whole way, he always has those wins.
Yeah, from the get go, from when they're
Yeah.
like very, very novice entry level scouts. Like, I mean, if you think back to season 1, even, he's providing them with wins and intel on the female Titan. You know what I mean? Like,
He figured it out.
yeah, so
Yeah.
he's obviously super valuable, and I think
Mm.
Levi ends up agreeing. But
But even in the end, he chooses to go with Erwin, and Erwin says, "No, like let me die."
yeah, that was crazy.
And that's the other thing too is they definitely set up Armin to be Erwin.
It's
Very tactical, even keeled, has emotion, but like always has like the right move.
just nowhere near as experienced or as
Except, yeah,
sure of himself, right?
yeah,
Like
probably like a younger Erwin.
Yeah,
would
like
probably, you know.
when he comes out of there and when he's alive and he realizes what has happened, he's like, "Wait, do I just replace Erwin?" They're like, "No, you're not a one-to-one replacement, but we did make the choice where
Yeah.
we brought you back instead of him." So, there's still quite a bit of pressure on him.
Hmm.
Yeah, I loved that whole thing, and I loved how, I'm sure a lot of people are fans of Levi for the same reasons, but I loved how almost irritable Levi was about making that choice.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh God!" Like at the end of all this, everybody's got a weakness. Everybody's the same, and
Yeah.
Erwin's weakness was simply that he put his quest for knowledge above everything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Levi was like, "Oh God, dude, they're all the same anyway. What does it really matter? I'm just gonna bring back art." You know what I mean? Like he was,
What a true nihilist.
he big time.
Yeah.
He yeah, like he's such a nihilist. He's like this killing machine that is almost like laissez-faire about it, and
Hmm.
he wants to do the right thing, but he's irritated, and it feels like he's inconvenienced by all this death and destruction that's around him so
Hmm.
often. That was like such a cool point. Giving him the syringe was a great idea because he's not exactly the most emotional guy.
Hmm.
um, so we skipped ahead to the whole Armin choice,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jump right to
but
the crux of it.
if we go back a bit, I mean that fight scene of them plugging up that second hole. Reiner comes out. If you remember, Levi doesn't hesitate. He comes right down, sticks a knife right through Reiner's neck.
Yeah.
I really thought he had him there for a sec.
I feel like Levi had everyone for a sec. In part two, there's there's just when he gets to obviously skipping ahead to the Beast Titan, but you know he's just always they're always just 1 second too slow.
I know.
And it's such a shame because it's
Yeah.
just the doom of the show is so great.
Yes.
Like there's no small failure. It's only critical failures in this show, which is it's just so heart-wrenching when you watch it.
Um, One thing that also like really primed was our you mentioned plot armor, and we learned like Reiner is basically killed. It feels like four times in this season 3 part 2. He gets the knife in
Yeah.
the neck from Levi, but then we learn that he can transfer his conscience throughout his whole or his consciousness throughout his whole body, so he
Yeah.
doesn't go down. And then he goes into Titan form, loses. It feels like he's losing a fair fight against Eren because
Yeah.
Eren's got the Titan brass knuckles now.
Yeah, the heart.
And he's beaten. It's a decent fight, but then backup arrives in the form of thunder spears. They land a bunch of shots. Eventually, they incapacitate him, but he's not dead yet. He's regenerating
Hmm.
and like incapacitated, and then the colossal titan shows
Yeah.
up.
Big Daddy Bernhardt come whipping in, riding the falls
Yeah,
in his barrel.
and then more madness ensues. um, there is a moment I should mention though that is pretty cool because it's towards the end of Berthold's character arc, right,
Yeah.
where he transforms, but right before he transforms he has a conversation with
With
Armin,
Armin.
and he is different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing too, like the villains, you can see the change in the villains from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like actually, I thought of it when you were just mentioning the consciousness part of the
Reiner,
armored
yeah.
titan. Do you remember in season 2 where Reiner revealed, like, he has that mental break and
Yes.
he reveals to Eren, he's like, hey, like, let's just go. Like, I can't do this shit anymore. Like, and I
Yeah, I
don't
gotta
think
go.
he's like, you should come. And he's the whole. I remember when the whole thing about him being able to move his consciousness through the body. I thought that was like kind of like a weird callback to like the mental break he had in
Oh,
season 2,
interesting.
where he's like, I don't know who I am anymore. Am I the one here to purge the human race, or like the Eldian race, or
Yeah.
or am I fighting for human life? Just like the movement of like the minds and all that. And so when that whole consciousness thing happened, I know it's kind of a stretch, but I remember that moment just kind of thinking back to season 2.
No, but I mean, you have a point. His
Yeah,
mind seems to be quite malleable. Maybe that's why he
yeah,
makes such a good Titan and is always
yeah,
just escaping death.
yeah.
But no, yeah, I remember. It seems like in this season, both him and Berthold really escape all of that doubt and anxiety and all that inner conflict, and they are just fully in
Yeah.
now.
They don't
They
have a
are just,
choice.
yeah, they, and we learn a little bit why, a little bit more why as to why they don't have any choice, but it doesn't matter because when they
Mm-hmm.
show up for that last fight, they're fighting to the death. No
Yeah.
more, no more deception. It's just all out conflict.
Yeah. The plea he gives to Army too is very like let's just don't do it. Like like it's over. It was, and it's just they're both sides are in so deep.
Yeah,
It's you can just tell there's a moment of like on both sides they're so into their cause. They can't back out, but it was just like a futile attempt. To
yeah. I
just
I remember Armin tries the whole, we still got Annie. Don't you want to come save her? And
yeah,
Berthold's like, no, that's not working twice. You got
no,
me with that once.
yeah,
Do whatever you want. I
yeah.
don't care. Um, and then he proceeds to transform, explode, destroy a bunch of stuff in his path. We think for a second that Hanji gets caught in it,
That
um,
was a good
misdirect.
yeah.
But I forget the name of the red shirt that saved her. It was like one of her guys, but she loses an eye. It looks like in the process.
Is it the same guy that brings Erwin back from the battlefield?
No, that's a different guy that is still alive towards the at the end of season 3.
Because I
Um,
remember him like getting upset to like, no, like I dragged Erwin back here for you to save the savior of humanity. Like, why are you picking this kid?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no, a different guy because the guy that saves Hanji just totally eats it. He's dead.
yeah,
Um, so he explodes, and then Aaron has a awfully futile attempt at trying to stop him. He literally kicks Aaron across the city, which was
yeah.
pretty cool.
Tried to grab at his ankle like a kid.
Yeah, and then we approach like pretty rapidly. We're approaching 3 conflicts simultaneously, right? I think it's Mikasa and Jean's group
Yeah,
taking out the armored Titan, and it's Eren and Armin against the Colossal Titan. And on the other side of the wall, the Beast Titan is just throwing perfect pitches with those crushed up boulders, and he's eradicating the rest of the Scout regiment. Um, do you remember all that was happening basically simultaneously?
that was some tough stuff.
That was
The I remember the stakes. I remember like not having super a lot of interest in what was going on with like the colossal type until like the armies like kind of sacrifice.
yeah.
I felt it very low stakes, but everything going on with the beast titan and the trap Irwin's trapped forces.
Oh god, I
I
know.
remember every second of that of like their scenes was just like this is so this is over.
Oh my god,
Like
yeah.
they got them. I thought that was like a total wipe. I
They
I actually thought that was like
well,
the end of that.
it kind of is almost. They even though the scout people, the regiment made it out, like they're the only ones left.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like you realize after that fight is over that his attack was super effective. Um,
just
all of the early,
pitching heaters.
yeah, perfect game. Yeah, that was amazing. So if we skip ahead a little bit, eventually Mikasa and crew managed to take out Reiner for I think like the third time in the fight,
Yeah,
second or third
for
time.
again
He
for only a moment.
Yeah, this time they finally actually blow him out of the Titan though.
Yeah,
They get him with a with one of those missiles, the Thunder Spears. And Hanji is the one that she comes back and revealed that she's alive.
yeah.
She blows up the other side of his face so that Mikasa can land a clean shot. She
Hmm.
does, blows him out of the back of his own neck. Checkmate Reiner.
Yeah,
And then at the same time, Eren and Armin do this plan, and I got to say they got me pretty good too. Where, you know, there's some very obvious. They're not trying to hide the foreshadowing anymore. It feels like Armin is explaining his plan. He
Yeah,
looks so sweet. The voice
yeah,
actor that plays both these guys are so great. Um, and you can just tell that he's hiding something. Aaron can tell that he's hiding something,
yeah.
but it's happening so fast you don't get much time to dwell on it because Aaron slips, and
Yeah.
you're like, wait, is this part of the plan? I'll admit they completely had me. I was like, oh my god, this is not part of the plan. This is bad.
Hmm.
um, and then he slips, and then it becomes this long drawn out process of Armin trying to 1v1 the Colossal Titans.
Yeah, just it's. I remember when they showed like just his crisp body.
Oh my god.
I was like, oh my god, they're gonna make me look at it.
Yeah.
Like, there was no like off screen like over the shoulder looking at someone holding his body. It's just like it was just there,
Yeah.
and
I
I was
Go
I
ahead.
was like, yeah, I was like they did it. I was like, plot armor doesn't exist anymore.
They
you know?
You're right, because I remember you and I were talking about it right before
Yeah.
that episode aired, and they're like, "There's no way," like
Oh yes, yes, that's true.
that crew is all safe. And then I remember the way he goes out was so good because one thing that's great about the show that we haven't talked about and we should pay special attention in season 4 is the soundtrack. Like the music is so great, and I
Yeah,
remember as he's hooked on, because Armin has yet another brainwave. He realizes that if he hooks his grappling hook into the guy's bone
the
or his
teeth.
teeth, that doesn't that won't come loose.
Yeah,
So
because it
as
doesn't burn up.
he's
Yeah.
yeah, so as he's taking all the heat literally, the music kicks in and he talks about I'll never get to see the sea. Aaron, you're gonna have to be the one to see the sea. And the music is kicking, and there's like blue flames going up his arms. His hair is all gone.
Yeah.
You can see his body kind of break backwards,
Mm.
and it's like it's so graphic and so good, and you still don't know what he's stalling for, and he finally lets go, and you realize like there's no saving him, or that's what
Yeah.
you're led to believe, and that's the moment. The audience is sharing the same perspective as Berthold. Berthold's like, "What the hell was the point of that?"
Yeah.
And then Aaron comes out, and it's so cool to me and so fitting that Aaron is the one that gets to deal the death blow,
Yeah.
because that's the first Titan Aaron fought in season 1. If you remember,
That's
Colossal
true.
Titan is the one that shows up when they kick the door in like the pilot, or not the pilot, but very early season 1.
Well, he like obviously the Colossal Titan is what kicks off like the
Yeah,
show in season one. But again, like right, I think they just finished their training
yeah.
and they're waiting, to. I think they're in the process of figuring out
What's
or what
next?
side or like where they're going, whether they're going to be
Yeah, they haven't
scouts
become
or
scouts yet.
and he's there, like
Yeah,
it pops up again. And then also that's the one thing too I forgot. He shows up and then the Colossal Titan just leaves.
yeah, vanishes.
He makes that hole and he's gone. And that is what kept like the identity of
Yep.
Reiner and Berthold is so smart. You
Yes.
know, like
His
the
yeah, he just vanishes, leaves the husk behind, and like
yeah,
just probably had gear on anyway, and just hightailed it out of there.
yeah,
But I love that Aaron in that moment in season 1 doesn't hesitate. He's like, all right, let's get him, and he
yeah,
tries to take him on
yeah.
solo.
We in this now.
But and he gets to finish that up, at great cost. But it was cool to see he was even more effective in his human form instead of his Titan form. That he gets to literally rip Berthold out of there was pretty satisfying.
Yeah, I would. Yeah,
And it's more satisfying when you realize the cost that they paid. We are led to believe that Armin has bit the dust. I think episodes breaks, and then the next thing you see, or it's the last thing we haven't touched on that's happening alongside all of this is the Levi versus Beast Titan fight.
yeah. Which the highlight of the season,
Yeah,
cinematic wise.
I totally agree. The best animated sequence of the whole show, maybe, and also, it's exactly similar to this Berthold fight, where the price we have to pay for Levi to get his fight is like literally everybody that's left of the Scout Regiment, including Erwin.
Yeah,
You get this last great speech out of Erwin. He's so good with those.
Oh,
And you also get like more of that nihilistic vibe from Levi, where Levi is the one to tell him. I think he literally says, "Give up on your dream and die.
yeah,
Lead those recruits straight into hell." It's like, my God, you know what I mean? Because like above all, you could tell that Levi has a spot for Erwin,
yeah.
but it's not so soft a spot that is going to let him sacrifice the mission.
He was his North Star, but
Yeah.
and he. I think the best part about Erwin was Erwin, or
Yeah.
Erwin. Was he grounded Levi?
Mhm.
I always found Levi like so mythical and
Mhm.
like, you know, Erwin was a good like grounding rod for him.
Mhm.
Just kind of kept the character a little more realistic. Showed him that he was human, as
Mhm.
nihilistic as he was, and
Yep.
it's it was good for them to have those moments, and then because that was kind of like their own last moment. Like he couldn't truly say goodbye to Erwin on that roof, when it came to the serum and
Yeah.
the spinal fluid and all
And you
that.
can
But
and you can tell, when once Levi's done dicing up the Beast Titan, he's talking crap throughout the whole thing. You can tell he's pretty shook up.
yeah,
And then the Beast Titan gets away, and the first thing Levi says is like, "Hey, I promised that I would kill you. Get back here." You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like you can feel like even though Erwin's gone, that'll probably be driving Levi. You know what I mean? Is that he left something unfinished that he told
my
Erwin he would do.
my prediction for season 4 is we're getting at least one flashback of Levi and Erwin.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
I also
maybe two, one or
yeah
two.
yeah quick off the cuff prediction is I am confident we're gonna get a round 2 fight Beast Titan with Levi.
Yes.
I don't know why, and I don't know the circumstances, but it just feels like season 4, and we should talk about what we should expect based off the reveal after this. But my bet is just conflict, conflict, conflict. Probably lots of fights. Um, yeah, but to wrap that up, I think we touched on it already a lot. So Beast Titan survives. We have the choice that we discussed already, where they had to choose who to give the syringe to.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Armin gets it. I'm stoked and curious to see what Armin looks like the next time he shifts into a Titan. Will he be the giant colossal now? Like, is that just how it works?
Oh, that's an interesting
Because
thought.
he ate Bertolt, and
Because
speaking
Bertolt
of
was
that, Bertolt did not go gently into that good night.
no. I the closing scene, teeth on his head and like his shoulder and torso.
Oh God.
It's pretty graphic. That's another again. I love this show. They know the moments they do good, they just do them great. Like they know their lane,
Mm-hmm.
and when the moment calls for it, they just it's pedal to metal. In some scenes in the show, it's dense and it's long and it's dark and it's meant to be that, but when it just needs to kick it in, like they just blow everything out of the water. It's tremendous,
Yeah,
and
that
that's
moment
the
was
yeah,
important, and they did
yeah.
not pull any punches.
No, every death is significant in this
Oh,
show.
visceral.
There's I guess that's the thing too. Like when they show death, even if it's like a main character or like a key character, even if it's not, even if it's just like Scout number 222 or whatever, like it's just some rando in the force. Like they show them all,
Oh yeah,
and it just goes to show
you
like
feel
the
every
world they
death.
live in. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And then the big ones you really feel like even that like when Berthold goes out, you're like fuck like.
I kind of liked him. I didn't want him
I
to go
did
like
like
that.
it. I remember the reveal in season 2. I was like, ah shit, it's gonna be one of these shows, like
Yeah.
where I'm oddly and then I guess the other big part of season 3, part 2, is just the basement. The reveal, like the genuine I guess we had touched this earlier, the kind of at the top, but I did not expect that. I remember seeing the photograph
Oh
and
God, that was
all
such a
and
brilliant way to explain to the audience very quickly that this is future technology that
yeah,
we don't have yet. So the fact that it has to be explained what a photograph is, like it's such a brilliant way of being like,
yeah,
there's a whole other society. Like they do that very efficiently.
yeah.
Right before we jump into the reveal, I do want to briefly mention, at the end of all these fights, Zeke
Oh, Zeke.
shows up on the back of that quadriplegic
Oh, the
Titan.
intelligent Titan.
Yeah.
Yeah, the smart Titan there.
So he shows up on the back of that guy, and they have a quick convo. And there's just a very quick moment where he says, "Hey, I'm going to rescue you. We're both victims of your father." And of all the things for him to say, I did not see that coming, right? Because we don't really know his motivation.
No.
They did a great job of not giving you context, but of showing you this guy talking. He's sitting around there. He's like, "Oh, don't get angry like your father," or, he's always talking in his own context, but the audience doesn't know what that is yet.
Hmm.
And then he finally
That,
lays his eyes on Aaron, and that's the first thing he says is, "Hey, I'm gonna come back and rescue you." It's like,
yeah,
what? What the hell are
yeah.
you talking? Were you just trying to kill all of us? That was just such a great interaction, and it just shows like there's more to come here. This
Mm.
guy is clearly involved in some shit.
There's just so much to talk about this show. Like you could honestly do the plan is to go through season 4,
Yeah,
one by one, but it's a shame we didn't get to do this prior because so much happens in a single like a 22-minute episode
yeah,
that you can mull over it for an hour.
yep.
It's and we can't do it justice because we're missing so many important tidbits. There's
Well,
just so much to talk about.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
this last thing we should discuss is obviously the basement reveal. We could probably do an hour just on that, but in the interest of time and efficiency, we should probably just go over kind of the highlights of what the reveal were, or what the
yeah,
reveal was, and what we learned. I think the biggest one by far out of all, and we learned a lot. It's a giant lore dump, right? And they did it,
huge Lord Dumb. I had to watch it 4 times.
yeah, and
I
they do it well, but it's a lot.
yeah,
But I'll try and go through a few, and you can correct me and tell me what else you took out of it. But the big one, obviously, to me was okay. They are not alone.
no,
We are not alone in this world. There is another society, and more importantly, we are going to be at war with this other society because of all kinds of reasons. Because of there's a very vast history, and there's a lot of reasons why they don't like us and we don't like them, and now we have to choose sides, and then we learn a lot
ultimately,
about where the Titans come from.
ultimately, was it
Yeah,
not revealed that the reason that they are coming is it just comes down to resources?
yeah, comes down to resources,
Yeah,
and yeah, I mean, I think that's the main thing, which is actually a pretty simple goal, right?
yeah,
Um, so the motivation makes sense. What we didn't know is like if if you think back about season 1 and 2, and if I said, oh, where Titans come from,
hmm,
Titans are actually there's this subjugated race of people on the mainland because this show takes place on an island.
yep,
And it's super, big time, Nazi kind of vibes. The Eldians literally have to wear armbands. They're in
yep,
internment camps. If they leave the camps, they get beaten,
or
um,
murdered.
or murdered. Yeah. There's underground resistances. It's pretty awful, right? And there's
Mm.
this whole rich history of why these people hate the Eldians and where the Titans came from in the first place. And I believe the lore there is something like 17 to 1800 years ago. Some Eldian made a deal basically with the devil. Is kind of the
That's
way they say it.
and that's the thing too. Like in the show, it's clearly depicted as like the devil or a devil,
Yeah.
but I don't. Did it specifically say that? I feel like any video of like I've my own personal research or curiosity, it all just I guess might be read the manga, but uh, did they explicitly say it was the devil?
They said a demon, I think, like a
No.
demon of sorts, called Ymir. But I think the funny thing is like they at one point they give you the Eldians version of that history,
Yes.
and
Because
it's
it's originally told to Grisha as a child, Aaron's father, by
yes,
his parents saying like, no, like we are bad people.
yeah,
That's why like
our
we live in these
ancestors,
camps.
yeah, they're kind of indoctrinated to believe that they're paying for the sins of their ancestors, right? Um, And but at one point, when you join the resistance and you hear the Eldian perspective, like the rebellious, they're like, no, no, like the we're subjects of Ymir. That like that was like a generous god. They weren't a devil. You know what I mean? So there's
Yeah.
these kind of which you get a lot of time in religion, right? There's these two
Yeah.
opposing factions, and one says it was a good thing, and the other says it was a bad thing. Either way, what they seem to agree on is that Eldian citizens at one time were in power and they subjugated a lot of other people, and it all went south recently as like a couple hundred years or so,
Mm.
when these citizens of Marley people got control of a lot of the Titans. Because apparently, how many are there? 9 or
There's
7?
nine in total. I think if I recall, they came into 7 of them,
Yeah,
and
and
then
then
the remaining 2
they
went to
turned
the island.
yeah, and so they turned the tide and subjugated the citizens of Marley to or Eldia to all this stuff. So all of our main characters are technically citizens of Eldia, right?
Yes.
Or Eldian citizens, whatever. And that's their king on their island decided a long time ago, I don't want any more part of this war. I'm getting out, and I'm gonna subjugate my people using these Titan powers to change their memory because this has all been so traumatizing,
Yeah.
and that's how we come to Attack on Titan in season 1 is everybody just believes the world, that they are the only humans left.
Yeah.
So they have no idea about this conflict and how it got them to where they are today. And now we know that. And it came with a couple other major reveals,
Yeah.
like, Grisha, Aaron's father, was born into all that.
Yeah.
And he came to the island and he remarried. He had a son that we later find out is Zeke. That turned on him. Like I said, we could talk like an hour about all this.
Oh yeah. This like the lore dump is. I can't think of a juicier lore dump in any spectrum of entertainment. It's just
Yeah.
it's like we said before, like we had been waiting for this for so long. Some people 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
2012. Some people we've been wanting to know what's in that basin for so long, and it just delivered.
Mm-hmm. Big time.
And it was clear, it was concise. I do. What say you? Do you think that it is a truly one sided view of history, or do you think there's still a chance that like the Marley, the citizens of Marley's take on it is still correct?
I don't think it's one sided. I think that
No.
ironically, like, you know, now we seem to know our enemy and understand them. But I think that one thing that Attack on Titan has done so beautifully is show you that just because they believe in different things doesn't make them bad
Correct.
people. I mean
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
AKA Reiner and Berthold, right? Like
Yeah.
clearly good people that were forced to do these things based off of where they grew up and where they came from.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious to see if season 4 is just all out war, or if it gets into shades of gray, where it feels like a lot of innocent people might get caught up in the mix, or it might not be super simple.
Mm.
Like there's that great little. They have a quick time skip at the end of season 3, where they finally see the ocean or the sea,
Yeah.
and Aaron says, we have answers, but all we really know now is we have more enemies. Like, when will
Yeah.
this be over?
Yeah.
Is it over when we go kill them all? And yeah, I don't think the audience doesn't know the answer to that. Aaron doesn't know the answer to that. I think on that is one of my last favorite things of season 3 was also
The 13 years.
the knowledge drop of the 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was huge.
No matter what, our boys are on limited time. Armin too, right?
Yeah.
And how awful is it that like we were saving Armin because we needed him, but we didn't know we were also just giving him a delayed death sentence. And so he's out no matter what.
But with that reveal, how wasted would it have been? Not wasted on Erwin. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
he had done, and that's something we can completely skip. Like the coup d'état on the royal family. I forget if that's at the end of part 1 or the beginning of part 2. That was he got them to where they are.
Yep.
The Irwin is the ultimate, like the passing of the baton was part
He.
one.
Yep.
He got them to where critical, decisions were made and discoveries were made about the situation of the world. He went out. See, like if I guess maybe we'll get back to the 13 years, but I think we should end this of who won, what one character won parts one and two.
Ooh.
My vote for part one, Fleago's my guy, but I do think Irwin, he
Yeah.
he's the one that got them to the finish line.
If his goal was to kind of change the system from the inside and try
Yeah,
and seek knowledge and work for the people, then yeah, he
yeah,
absolutely won big time. And as far as part two goes, it's hard to say who the winners are because it feels like with the scouts have a big win. Like
yeah.
I would say Armin maybe won part two because he contributed so heavily in part two. But he also, becomes now he's a Titan. It's tough to call it a win because now he knows he's going to die soon anyway, or relatively speaking, and they have so much farther to go still.
Mm.
So it feels that's a tough question, but yeah, I'm not. I would say maybe Armin if I had to answer.
Do you foresee some army guilt in going into season four? How do you think he's gonna? I feel like there's gonna be some self confliction
Yeah,
with the Titan. I'm curious to see him behave as the Colossal Titan.
same. I'm curious to see if they use him tactically speaking because they have mentioned that like the Colossal Titan's kind of a big one, literally,
Yeah,
like it's an important one to have.
yeah,
So I'm curious if he'll be used because he's never really been a useful military resource.
no.
He's always been a plans and strategy type guy.
He's a tactical mind. He's not a tactical
Yeah,
body.
yeah. So I'm curious to see him wrestle with that. I think he will. Maybe we should just shift gears into what we're looking forward to in season four.
Yeah, let's do that.
I am super interested in what happens with Mikasa. I remember at the end of season three, it looks like she's lost weight. Like Aaron actually says, "You look sick. Like what's going on?"
Mm,
And she's clearly very stressed out about this death sentence that he's been given.
true.
Um,
Yeah,
Mikasa is not one dimensional,
no.
but it's very clear that her driving force is Aaron. You know what I mean? He's kind of what's keeping her going. It feels like he's kind of her mission in life
Yeah.
for whatever
She,
reason.
she has felt very not one note. Like she's the heavy. Always
Yeah,
has been. And and maybe that is. I think you're right. I think she's going to play a bigger part. Well, I think she has to be in the finale, but because like Army had his development, like he got over all his fears of like season after season of like proving himself, and then he took that final leap, and like he had that literal rebirth. You know, I'm wondering if Mikasa's going to get the same thing. Not like obviously become a Titan, but like if she's finally going to develop into that final
yeah.
step. Like and even Aaron, I think at the end of season three, part one, like he was so whiny, he was
Oh
so
yeah.
hard on himself, and then I honestly can't think of a moment in season three, part two, where I'm like, oh, I enjoy Aaron on screen now. Like he was one of
Oh
my
yeah.
least favorite. But I think that's like protagonist
Yeah.
curse. It's
He definitely
you know,
performs. He comes out of he kind of figures it out. I
yeah,
think Mikasa will probably develop a bit more, but she's also, if I have one, she's probably at the top of my death list. I feel like she might go down in a hail of bullets,
yeah,
in a really heroic way.
yeah.
Her and Levi, I think, are candidates. It's hard to say how Levi would go out if he does. But Mikasa's my number one pick for characters to bite it this season.
Yeah.
And as far
I,
as the plot goes itself, like I feel like we just don't know enough. You know what I
no.
mean? We know what we're fighting for now, but how it happens, I have no idea.
I could see a theme of this season like being all for naught.
Yeah.
I could see Army catching one again.
Yep.
That like the I could see maybe conflict between the group of having chosen Army and then it being
Yeah.
for nothing and then Irwin could have survived kind of thing. I'm most looking. I want to see I'm ready for that fourth Reiner fight.
Yeah, I'm ready to get him out of there.
Yeah,
He's a good character. He's multidimensional. He's had lots of progress, but I feel like for the good of the show and the plot, he's got to bite it, and he's got to bite it good.
I think he's kind of bite it early.
I think so too. That would be a great way to
Yeah,
set the stage. I also think, and we've gotten to know some of these tertiary characters so well, like Connie, Sasha, John, Hanj, or Hanji. I feel
Hanji.
like all of them are ripe for the picking. If any of them bite it,
It's
it's
Connie.
yeah. If any of them bite it, and it's possible. The show doesn't exactly need them, but you still care about them enough because they're like OG squad members.
Yeah.
They're all impactful deaths. Um, so I think they're all very vulnerable.
Do you think maybe this is a little? That's the thing too. Where as we speak, the episode one is waiting to be watched by both of us,
Yeah.
and I can honestly see Levi getting snuffed out.
Yeah.
It's like you said. I think there's going to be that rematch between him and the Beast Titan.
Yeah.
It's not going to go the way he wants it, and then I really wonder if Aaron's just going to go the whole way. That would be another thing too. Like Aaron, we're Aaron's missing in action for a portion of the season. Like who
Yeah.
knows what we're getting into? It's
Aaron is just so tragic. It just feels like he might get that he might get his way and win, but it could be easily be one of those at what cost type
yeah,
of things. Like, does he lose everybody? And he's just kind of the only one left among the corpses. Hard to say,
yeah.
but I think that's a
All
good spot to leave it. Did you have one more thing?
no, I'm just more excited for some ODM action. Twirling, I love the twirls like the
Camera, like the forced perspective.
yeah, just the spins too. Like there's no the eruption the characters can do on screen.
Hmm.
Just it's honestly like orgasm, like it's pornographic sometimes.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's an
it's
exercise in like, oh my,
animation and
this is
talent. Yeah,
yeah, this is how
it's
good anime can get.
the moments where they explode. I remember when I was watching Demon Slayer.
Mm,
Um, when they would erupt into like their final move or like
yeah,
the finale of a fight, it was like, oh, this is like it would actually be interesting to see if like there's some similar studio work on those two shows, but like just like the way the characters would explode into their the finality of like a final move, like when
yeah,
Levi's blasting off his horse at the Beast Titan.
yeah.
I remember just being like, oh, like it's on now,
Here we go.
like yeah, it was like
Yeah.
on Mach 10, yeah.
Speaking of which, new animation studio for this final season, they have giant shoes to fill.
I agree. Yeah, and what a weird move, and like I don't know the in depths of that, but
Me neither.
regardless of the different studio, I'm not going in any less excited. There's no
Same.
hesitation on my part.
Same. I'm very curious to see how they do it. I mean, they're keeping the same voice actors. It's the
Yeah,
same, based off the same manga. It's literally just different people drawing it. And
yeah.
you could tell from the season 4 trailer that they clearly are not trying to copy it one for one. They're going in their own artistic kind of direction.
Have you watched? I obviously have because you saw it. Have you watched any of the trailers?
Just the one
Just the
that
one.
came out, maybe not a year ago, but several months ago.
Yeah.
And it has kind of like a cold open. It shows you different characters, and
I got
a lot of
yeah.
action scenes.
I got 20 seconds in and I had to stop myself. I said this is not how I think the season should be watched. All the key art. I took a gander at some of the key art, but that was as it piecemealed out. But I'm going in as fresh as I can
Yeah,
into this season.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't feel like it gave much away, but it did. The one thing I took from it, the biggest thing I took from it was that it were very different visual style. Still looks great,
Hmm.
but I'm curious to see how it feels when we actually sit down and watch it.
Well, I look forward to continuing this conversation week to week, Dave. This show is an important show. This is
Big
what
time.
reinvigorated my love for anime, all things anime,
Oh yeah,
and
this one I came fresh off the heels off of one of my favorite ever shows, which was Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and I went right into Attack on Titan, and they could not be more different shows. and I agree with you. It totally, gave me a completely new appreciation for
Yeah.
Attack on Titan or for anime in general. So I'm stoked to keep the conversation going as we finish their last season.
Right on. Well, I'll see you on the other side, bud.
Okay. Okay. Cheers. Thanks, Grant.
Cheers. Yeah, you too.